Welcome to the world of sci-fi stories, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the channel. Enjoy the listening. They thought humanity wouldn't retaliate. Then the fleet of vengeance arrived. Grand Admiral Krell stood on the observation deck of the A1 flagship, the magnificent Devastator, watching the remnants of Earth's orbital defenses burn and break apart in the planet's atmosphere. Streaks of fire painted the blue world with orange brush strokes as humanity's last stand crumbled before his four eyes. "Would you look at that?" Krell chuckled, raising his ceremonial chalice filled with fermented syrup from the gardens of his home world. The mighty humans reduced to pretty light shows in less than a standard galactic week. The bridge crew erupted in laughter, mandibles clicking and appendages slapping against control panels. Lieutenant Nora, his second in command, sidled up beside him, her scales glistening under the bridge lights. "The Supreme Council is broadcasting your victory speech to all 17 conquered systems, sir," she reported, barely containing her excitement. "Your popularity ratings have never been higher. There's even talk of a planetary holiday in your honor." "A holiday for this?" Kel gestured dismissively toward the burning planet. "Please, this wasn't even a proper war, more like pest control." He paused for dramatic effect. "Very loud pest control." More laughter rippled across the bridge. Commander 10X approached with a holographic display showing real-time destruction statistics. "Final tally, sir. 98% of human military assets neutralized. The remaining 2% are scattered and pose no strategic threat, and their colonies," Krell asked, sipping his drink. "All major settlements have surrendered or been neutralized," 10X replied. "A few outposts in the system humans called Alpha Centaur are still transmitting defiance messages, but they have no weapons capable of threatening even our smallest scout ships." Krell nodded, satisfaction oozing from his pores, releasing the sweet scent of victory that his species was famous for. "Excellent. Have the celebration. Vessels move into formation. I want to parade around this conquered rock. Let the survivors watch as we party above their smoking ruins." Sir Tanks hesitated. "What about the survivors? Do we offer terms?" Krell stared down at Earth, where clouds of smoke now obscured large portions of the continents. He'd studied these humans before the invasion. "Their bizarre are diplomatic protocols, their ridiculous attachment to concepts like honor and revenge, such primitive notions." "The survivors?" Krell laughed, spraying droplets of syrup across the viewport. "What are they going to do? Throw rocks at us? Let them live with their defeat. It'll be more humiliating than extinction." He raised his voice to address the entire bridge. "Besides, we've taken everything worth taking: their resources, their technology, primitive as it was, and most importantly, their pride." The celebration began in earnest then, as when battle hymns blared through speakers, food dispensers opened on all decks, and the fleet arranged itself into a victory formation that from the planet's surface at DES would appear as the A1 symbol for conquest. No one noticed the small unmarked ships slipping away from Earth's dark side, heading toward the outer reaches of the solar system. Commander VX paced nervously in his private quarters aboard the support vessel Vigilant Observer. Unlike the rest of the Azurian fleet, now 3 days into their victory celebrations, VX couldn't shake the uneasiness crawling beneath his scales. He pulled up the intelligence reports again. T-37 human vessels, unaccounted for 37, and not scout ships either, heavy cruisers, carriers, and what the humans called destroyers, a name that had initially made the Azurian High Command laugh. Who names their ships after their function? How unsophisticated. No one was laughing now, at least Rex wasn't. The door chimed, and Lieutenant Brex entered carrying a data crystal. "Let me guess," Rex said without looking up. "Grand Admiral Krell has denied my request for a meeting again." "Not exactly, Sir," Brex replied, his voice tight with discomfort. "He's approved your request, but scheduled it for next week, after the victory tour reaches the A1 homeworld next week." Rex slammed his fist against the wall, leaving a dent in the metal plating. "By the cosmic void, we could all be dead by next week." Brex looked nervously at the door. "Sir, perhaps you should lower your voice. The crew is already talking about your concerns." "Let them talk." Rex turned to his display screen, pulling up historical archives. "Do you know why I requested to be the head of human studies before this invasion, because I actually studied them. He tapped the screen, bringing up footage from Earth's entertainment networks, pausing on scenes of human warfare. Look at their history, Rex. Look at how they fight among themselves. When the humans of Japan attacked a place called Pearl Harbor, the retaliation was swift and devastating. When terrorists struck their twin towers, they waged war for decades. Brex nodded politely, the way one nods at a clearly deranged superior. Sir, with all due respect, those were conflicts between human factions. This is different. We're not humans, we're Aarons, the most advanced civilization in this sector. That's exactly what the Mendians thought, Rex replied grimly, pulling up another file. Remember them? Great space-faring empire about 3 centuries ago. No, that's because they don't exist anymore. The file displayed a grainy image of another alien species. Tall and regal, looking with crown like crests, the Mandans enslaved a primitive world called Taurus Ivy. The native species there had just discovered spaceflight. They looked harmless. Rex paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. Within 1 generation, that harmless species had not only overthrown their enslavers, but hunted them to extinction across 12 star systems. Bray swallowed hard. And you think humans will do the same? I think Juries said carefully. Not yet. We've just bombed the homeworld of a species whose entertainment consists primarily of stories about underdogs rising up against overwhelming odds and winning through sheer determination and resourcefulness, a species that turns defeat into mythology, that romanticizes last stands and revenge quests. He closed the display with a sharp gesture. And we didn't even finish the job. But what could they possibly do? Their military is decimated, their infrastructure is in ruins. Rex walked to the viewport, staring out at the celebration lights twinkling around Earth's orbit. Have you read my report on human General Sherman? No, he said. War is cruelty, and you cannot refine it. The humans understand something that we in our technological superiority have forgotten. They understand that survival sometimes requires savagery. A notification pinged on his console. Mad here, another request for his presence at the Grand Admiral celebration. Gala, another opportunity to smile and pretend all was well. File my reports again. He told Brex, flag them as urgent security concerns and double-check our long-range scanners. If I'm right, the humans won't just lick their wounds. They'll gather every ship, every weapon, every survivor with a pulse, and they'll come for us with everything they have. And if you're wrong, Sir, Brex managed a grim smile, then I'll happily accept demotion and ridicule, but I'd rather be a living laughing stock than a prophetic corpse. From the observation deck of the Aouen scout ship, distant whisper. Lieutenant Mock watched the barren asteroid belt of the system. Humans called Kuiper, his assignment monitor for any unusual activity, was widely considered punishment, duty. Who'd want to steer at rocks when the rest of the fleet was celebrating another thrilling day in paradise? Ma muttered to himself, propping his feet on the console. Computer, any movement out there besides the usual space debris? Negative, Lieutenant. The ship's AI responded, all readings consistent with standard asteroid movement patterns. Mal yawned and reached for his snack pack. 6 more hours until his relief arrived. 6 more hours of nothing than the proximity alert, chirped Mal. Nearly fell out of his chair, fumbling to activate the visual sensors. Computer, what was that meteor? Unknown object, Lieutenant. Mass consistent with small transport vessel trajectory, indicates controlled movement. Show me, Mal ordered, suddenly alert. The view screen zoomed in on what appeared to be an unremarkable chunk of ice and rock, except there was a faint heat signature emanating from its core. Scan again, Moch commanded, full spectrum. As the scanner worked, Mock's eyes widened. The asteroid was Ake, and it wasn't alone. Computer, expand scan radius. Look for similar anomalies. The results made Ma's blood run cold. Throughout the asteroid field, dozens, no hundreds of asteroids were moving against the natural orbital patterns. Some were clearly hollowed out, others had subtle thruster signatures. But most disturbing was what lay at the heart of the asteroid field. It's a massive construction project, hidden from casual detection by the surrounding rocks. Human ships, many bearing battle damage, were docking with a sprawling space station cobbled together from salvaged parts. Cosmic void, Mel whispered, reaching for the emergency communication panel. they gathering before he could send his warning. A shadow fell across his viewport. A massive asteroid had somehow moved into position directly above his ship, impossible given natural physics. The last thing Lieutenant Musk saw was the asteroid splitting open like a cocoon, revealing a retrofitted human mining vessel with newly mounted weapons pointed directly at him. Admiral Helen Chen surveyed the growing armada from the command center of what the survivors now called Haven Station. The makeshift headquarters, built inside a hollowed-out dwarf planet, hummed with activity as technicians, welded engineers redesigned, and soldiers trained at status report. She demanded, her voice horror from the smoke she'd inhaled during Earth's evacuation. Commander Jackson Torres approached, his face bearing fresh scars from the battle. We've neutralized another Oran scout. That makes 5 this week. So far none have managed to send warnings, and our fleet B-53 combat-ready vessels, Admiral, another 37 in final stages of repair or retrofitting. The civilian ships are being converted as quickly as possible. Chen nodded, studying the holographic display showing their force. Not nearly enough for a direct confrontation, but they weren't planning one, and Operation Hornet's Nest Tours allowed himself a grim smile. Completed. Admiral, sleeper cells are in position throughout Oran territory. They're awaiting your command and the vengeance protocol ready for implementation. Chen looked around at the determined faces surrounding her factory. Workers turned soldiers, scientists turned weapon designers, civilians turned warriors, all united by one purpose: retribution. They think they've won, Chen said, her voice carrying across the command center. They think this was a war. She paused, running her fingers along the jagged scar that now bisected her face. They're about to learn it was just the opening skirmish. Du-RN supply officer Quell was bored out of his mind. Convoy protection duty was the dullest assignment in the fleet, especially for supply ships headed to the newly conquered human colonies. The humans were beaten. Finished. This escort mission was purely ceremonial, sir, called the censored technician. I'm picking up an anomaly at coordinates 227 Mark 43. Quell didn't even look up from his game console, probably just to bris from the war logit and move on. But sir, it's moving against the solar wind, and it's accelerating. Bass that got Quell's attention. He set down his device and moved to the sensor station. Show me. The screen displayed a small object barely larger than a personal shuttle approaching their convoy at surprising speed. Its energy signature was unusual, neither Oran nor recognizably human. Open a channel. Quell ordered. Unknown vessel. This is the Zytharian Defense Force ship, Dutiful Guardian. Identify yourself immediately. No response. Yeah. Unknown vessel, you are approaching a military convoy. Change course immediately, or we will fire warning shots. Still nothing. Rena, sir, the weapons officer called out. Should I target them? Quell hesitated. His standing orders were clear: no unnecessary engagements that might dampen the victory celebrations. Back home. Fire a warning shot. Low yield, wide berth. The Dutiful Guardian's smallest cannons fired, sending energy pulses that deliberately missed the approaching object by several ship lengths. The response was immediate and shocking. The small vessels suddenly split apart, revealing it wasn't a ship at all, but a cluster of what appeared to be missiles. No drones, dozens of them, each no bigger than a food crate, spreading out in a perfect geometric pattern. What in the void? Quell began. Sir, they're broadcasting something. The communication officer's panicked voice was interrupted by a message blaring through the ship's speakers. It wasn't a voice exactly, it was a sound that made every Awen scale stand on end, a keening, mournful noise that somehow conveyed pure rage. Then came words, spoken in perfect Yuan. We are humanity's vengeance. We are what remains. We are coming. Before Quell could respond, the drones accelerated toward the convoy, each targeting a different vessel. His tactical officer shouted for evasive maneuvers, but it was already too late. The drones didn't explode on impact as expected. Instead, they attached themselves to the hulls of the Awen ships and began broadcasting from every communication system on every ship. Came sounds, human voices crying out in terror and pain, recordings from the bombardment of Earth, children screaming for parents, final transmissions from doomed defenders, the death throes of a planet And between each heart-wrenching soundbite came that same monotone voice: "We are humanity's vengeance. We are what remains. We are coming. Shut it off, Quell." Shouted, his hands pressing against his auditory cavities. "Or override all communication systems." "We can't, sir," the communications officer replied, panic evident in his voice. "They've locked out our control somehow." As the psychological assault continued, the sensor officer gave a strangled cry. "So, multiple contacts detected at the edge of the system. They're coming out of nowhere." The main view screen activated, automatically showing what was approaching: a fleet of ships, unlike any Quell had ever seen. Some were clearly human military vessels bearing battle damage, yet still functional. Others appeared to be civilian ships, retrofitted with weapons. But most disturbing were the hybrid vessels, R&D tech, grafted onto human frames, creating monstrous chimeras of metal and weaponry. At the center of this nightmarish armada was a massive ship that dwarfed even the largest Aswan cruiser. Its hull was scarred and blackened, clearly having survived the worst of the Earth bombardment. Across its side, in both human and Awan script, was painted its name: Retribution. "Send a distress signal to command." Quell ordered, his voice cracking. Tell them the humans have returned." But no distress signal would ever leave the convoy. The drones attached to their hulls weren't just psychological warfare devices. They were signal jammers. The supply convoy was completely alone. The last thing Officer Quell saw before the first salvo hit was a message broadcasting from the approaching fleet: "You should have killed us all." The Awan defense fleet, orbiting Proxima Centauri, represented the pride of their military might: 43 warships arranged in the legendary set Spear of Conquest formation. It was a sight that had made countless alien civilization surrender without firing a shot. High Commander Z stood on the bridge of the Invincible Dominance, radiating confidence despite the disturbing reports filtering in from the outer systems. Supply convoys gone silent, outposts failing to report in, and rumors, ridiculous rumors, that the humans were fighting back. Preposterous, Zeeks muttered, running a polishing cloth over his ceremonial armor. A few terrorist actions from survivors, nothing more. His second in command, Tactical Officer Prell, approached with a data pad. "Sir, long range sensors have detected unusual activity near the system's edge. Multiple vessels approaching at sublight speed." "Identification?" "Yes, unknown, sir. They're using some kind of stealth technology we haven't encountered before." Z snorted, expelling scented confidence pheromones that made nearby officers stand straighter. "Probably pirates hoping to scavenge from our glorious conquest. Prepare a welcoming party to destroyer-class vessels should suffice with respect." Sir Prell hesitated, mandibles clicking nervously. Given the recent disruptions in communication with other outposts, perhaps a more cautious approach. "Are you suggesting," Zex interrupted, eyes narrowing, "that the mighty Zytharian Empire should cower before unidentified ships? What's next, PR? Shall we surrender the system because of a few sensor ghosts?" The bridge crew chuckled appreciatively. "No, sir, of course not, PR. Back down. I'll dispatch the destroyers immediately." The destroyers' righteous fury and swift justice detached from the main fleet, engines flaring as they moved to intercept the approaching vessels. "Sir," the communications officer called suddenly, "the destroyer captains report visual confirmation of the approaching fleet. They're human vessels." Z's confidence wavered for the first time. "Show me." Yea, the main view screen flickered to life, displaying a feed from the lead destroyer. What Z saw made his stomach churn. Human ships, dozens of them, but not the sleek, standardized military vessels they had faced during the invasion. These were monstrosities, cobbled together from salvaged parts. Some appeared to be mining vessels with weapon systems grafted onto their hulls. Others were clearly civilian craft converted for war. Most disturbing were the ships that incorporated Awan technology stolen or scavenged from destroyed vessels. But it wasn't the ships themselves that made Z's blood run cold, it was their appearance. Each vessel was painted matte black, with only a single marking, a crimson streak, like a wound across the hull, and attached to their exteriors were trophies, pieces of Awan ships, fragments of armor, and in some cases what looked disturbingly like reserved body parts by the void. Someone Whispered on the bridge, "They're hunting us, gay nonsense." Zex roared, though his confidence pheromones had given way to the acrid scent of fear, "and they're trying to intimidate us with primitive psychological tactics. Destroyer squadron, engage and destroy those abominations." The Aswan destroyers surged forward, weapon systems powering up the human fleet. Didn't adjust formation, didn't attempt invasive maneuvers, didn't even power up their visible weapons. They just kept coming. Sir PR said quietly, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessels, that something's not right." Before Zex could respond, the lead human ship, a grotesque hybrid of what had once been an Earth cargo hauler, began to glow. The energy readings spiked, and then the ship detonated in a blinding flash that engulfed the closest Awen destroyer. When the light faded, the destroyer was simply gone, leaving only scattered debris. "What just happened?" Zex demanded, his voice rising in pitch. "Report." The human vessel PR answered, mandibles trembling, deliberately overloaded its power core. The explosion completely vaporized the righteous fury. They sacrificed their own ship as a weapon. Zex couldn't process what he was seeing. "What kind of strategy is that?" Then the communications officer called out again, his voice shaking. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Audio only. Leighton here." It's ordered. A human voice filled the bridge, calm, measured, and utterly terrifying in its lack of emotion. "This is Admiral Helena Chen of the human fleet of vengeance. You took our homes, you took our families, you took our future. We have nothing left to lose." In the background, voices began chanting something rhythmic in the human tongue. The translation software struggled briefly before providing the meaning. "Earth remembers, Earth avenges, no mercy given, none asked." The transmission continued. "Each ship in my fleet carries enough explosives to destroy one of yours. We have more ships than you do. Do the math." As Chen spoke, another human vessel accelerated toward the remaining A1 destroyer, glowing with the same ominous light as the first. "Full retreat." Z screamed, all pretense of confidence abandoned. "All vessels, emergency withdrawal." But it was too late for the swift justice. The second human ship collided with it, creating another devastating explosion as the main Urian fleet scrambled to regroup. The human armada advanced inexorably, more ships lighting up their cores, preparing for the ultimate sacrifice. "They're insane," PR whispered, watching the tactical display in horror. "They're not fighting to win, they're fighting to ensure we lose." The emergency session of the Aowen Supreme Council was chaos. Grand Admiral Krell, his ceremonial armor hastily donned, and slightly Asu fade the fury of the assembled counselors. "How is this possible?" demanded Supreme Counselor Vax, pounding his gnarled fist against the ancient stone table. "You assured us the humans were defeated, broken. You paraded around their burning world like a conquering hero." Kell struggled to maintain his composure. "The humans should have surrendered. Any rational species would have accepted defeat. Yet here we are," hissed Counselor Mira, her ceremonial headdress quivering with rage. "With 17 outposts gone silent, 3 supply fleets destroyed and the Proxima Center Defense Fleet in full retreat." She leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Explain yourself, Admiral, and choose your words carefully. Your life depends on it." Commander VX stepped forward from the shadows, where he'd been watching. "If I may, Supreme Council," the human studies expert Counselor Traz said with a dismissive gesture, "what insight could you possibly offer after this catastrophic intelligence failure?" "Not a failure," Counselor VX corrected calmly, "a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. One I attempted to warn about." He activated the central holographic projector, displaying footage from the recent battles. "What you're witnessing isn't just revenge, it's something deeper, something woven into human DNA." The hologram showed human ships deliberately colliding with Awen vessels. "They look at their tactics, they're sacrificing themselves without hesitation." "Primitive suicide attacks," scoffed Krell. "Desperation, nothing more." "No," Rex countered, switching the display play to show historical human footage. "This is a pattern throughout their history. Humans have a concept they call going down fighting. When faced with certain defeat, many human cultures consider it honorable, even necessary, to inflict maximum damage on their enemy regardless of personal survival." The display showed ancient human battles Last Stand's desperate charges warriors fighting despite mortal wounds. We assumed Rex continued that by destroying their military capability. We had won, but we failed to understand that humans don't need armies to fight when sufficiently motivated. Every human becomes a potential weapon. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. There's more, Rex said, his voice lowering. We've intercepted communications between their vessels. They're not just fighting to hurt us. They've enacted something called the Samson Protocol. Explain, demanded Vax. In human mythology, Sam's son was a warrior who, when captured and blinded by his enemies, brought down the pillars of their temple, killing himself along with all of his captors. Rex paused, letting the reference sink in. The human survivors aren't just attacking our military targets, they're targeting something far more valuable. He switched the display, again showing a map of Oran space, with several key points highlighted in warning red. These are gravitational stabilization stations, gasped Council Mira. Without them, Rex finished grimly. The artificial wormholes that form our Empire's transportation network will collapse. Our worlds will be isolated from each other. Our civilization will fragment. How could they possibly know about the stabilizers? Krell demanded that information is classified at the highest levels. Rex's expression darkened. Because, Admiral, while you were celebrating your victory, the humans were watching, learning. They didn't just run from Earth. They salvaged our technology, downloaded our databases, captured our soldiers for interrogation. He brought up one final image, a human laboratory, where Azurian prisoners were clearly being studied, their technology disassembled. They're not just seeking revenge, VX concluded. They're waging a total war of extinction. And they're using our own arrogance against us. The council room erupted into panic, shouting accusations flew. Blame shifted, and throughout it all Rex stood silently watching the footage loop again and again. Humans, these supposedly defeated creatures, systematically dismantling the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. They should have surrendered, Krell muttered beside him. More to himself than to Rex. Any irrational species would have. Rex turned to him, mandibles tight with barely contained fury. That, Admiral, is precisely the point. Humans aren't rational. Not when it comes to survival, not when it comes to revenge. And in failing to understand that fundamental truth, you may have doomed us all. The once magnificent spires of Azure Prime gleamed in the light of the setting twin suns, their crystalline surfaces reflecting gold and crimson. It should have been a moment of tranquil beauty. Instead, the capital city trembled with fear. Citizens packed the streets, their faces turned skyward as military transports roared overhead, rushing to reinforce the planetary defense grid. Public displays broadcast evacuation instructions on endless loops. The sweet scent of mass panic hung in the air, a phone cocktail no Odwin could ignore. In the high command bunker deep beneath the Imperial Palace, Grand Admiral Krell, stripped of his ceremonial rank, but still the most experienced military mind available, stared at tactical displays with growing dread. The Outer Defense Fleet has engaged the human forces, report General Nex. Her scales dull with exhaustion. Initial casualty reports are significant. Show me. Kell demanded. The holographic display shifted to real-time battle footage. Azwen warships, the pride of their military, fired salvas of energy weapons at the approaching human fleet, but for every human vessel they destroyed, 3 more emerged from the darkness of space. And these weren't the suicide ships they'd encountered at Proxima Centauri. These were something far worse. The humans have been learning, adapting, salvaging Oran technology, and combining it with their own brutal innovation. What in the eternal void is that? Krell whispered as the footage zoomed in on the human flagship. The vessel was massive, clearly built around the core of an Oran dreadnought, but modified almost beyond recognition. Where Awen ships were elegant and streamlined, this abomination bristled with weapons. Its hull was a patchwork of materials, some sections gleaming with stolen Awen alloys, others bearing the crude but effective armor of human design. Across its bow, in both human and Awen script, was emblazoned a single word: judgment. Sir, General Nex said quietly, "We're receiving a transmission from the human vessel. They're requesting to speak with the Supreme Council." Deny it, Krell snarled. "We don't negotiate with the Council. Has already accepted." Nex interrupted. "They're taking the call now." Krell's blood ran cold. "Get me into that meeting." By the time Krell reached the Emergency Council chamber. The transmission was already displayed on the massive central screen. The human commander was not what he expected, not a grizzled warrior or a hate-filled youth, but a middle-aged woman with silver straw hair and eyes that held no anger, no passion, only a terrifying resolve. Understand that you have your protocols, counselors, she was saying, her voice unnervingly calm. But I'm afraid time is a luxury neither of us possesses at this moment. Who are you? Demanded Supreme Counselor Vax, attempting to project authority despite the tremor in his voice. Admiral Helena Chen, commanding the human fleet of judgment. She paused, then added, formerly director of Xenocultural Relations for the United Earth Government. Before your bombardment, my job was to prepare humanity for peaceful first contact. An uncomfortable silence fell across the council chamber. What do you want, Council? Nia finally asked. Justice, Chen replied simply. Accountability. You're outnumbered, Krell interjected, stepping forward. Your species is on the brink of extinction. What possible leverage do you have to demand anything? For the first time, something like emotion flickered across Chen's face, a ghost of a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You still don't understand humans, do you, Admiral? Even now, she nodded to someone off-screen, and the transmission view pulled back to reveal a massive device behind her, a tangle of technology, partly human, partly Oran. Commander Vx, who had been quietly observing from the corner, suddenly rushed forward. That's a gravitic destabilizer. Where did they get a gravitational destabilizer? We built it, Chen answered calmly, from the wreck aid of your attack fleet. Your weapons against Earth gave us everything we needed to understand how your technology works. She paused, including your planetary defense systems. The implications hit Krell like a physical blow. You wouldn't. He breathed. Your attack would trigger our automated defense grid. The resulting gravitic collapse would destroy everything in this system, including your own fleet. Yes, Chen agreed, that ghostly smile returning. It would. What on screen? She turned to her crew. Activate the destabilizer. Target their planetary core. Wait, screamed Counselor Vax. We can negotiate terms of surrender. Reparations. Reparations. Shen repeated the word, hollow in her mouth. Can you resurrect our dead, rebuild our world, restore what was taken? She shook her head. You had your chance for mercy when you celebrated over the ruins of our home. The device behind her began to pulse with ominous energy. We could have been allies, Chen said, her voice finally betraying emotion, not hatred, but something worse, disappointment. Instead, you taught us a lesson we'll never forget in this universe. The only safety lies in being the most feared. The screen went black as the first tremors shook the council chamber. Krell turned to Rex, seeking some solution, some escape. Rex merely shook his head. I did warn you, Admiral. Humans don't fight to win, they fight so their enemies lose. Outside, the beautiful twin suns of Aura Prime began to waver as the planet's core destabilized, gravity itself becoming their executioner. Due 5 cycles later, the trading vessel Cautious Venture approached the nebula that had once been the Awen home system. Captain Lorix, a villain with iridescent scales and too many eyes, stared at the swirling clouds of dust and radiation with undisguised awe. Beautiful in its way, he commented to his navigator. Hard to believe an entire civilization died there. Not just died, the navigator replied quietly, was executed. The ship sensors pinged, alerting them to an approaching vessel. Lorix tense. This region was notorious for pirates. The power vacuum left by the Zytharian Empire's collapse had led to lawlessness throughout the sector. Unknown vessel approaching, announced the tactical officer. It's human lore. Rex's scales flattened against his body in instinctive fear. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans now. The sleek patrol ship that pulled alongside them bore no obvious weapons, yet somehow seemed more threatening because of it. Its hull was midnight black, with a single crimson stripe, the now universal symbol of human military vessels. This is human peacekeeping vessel, Vigilant Guardian, came the transmission. State your business. In this sector, Lorix swallowed his fear and responded personally. Trading vessel Cautious Venture, carrying medicinal supplies to the Prune colonies. We have all necessary permits. A pause, then transmit your manifest and continue on your approved course, he advised. This is a memorial zone. Maintain respectful velocity and emissions. As the human vessel prepared to move on, Lorix couldn't help himself. Wait, is it true what they say about this place? The human communication officer hesitated before responding. What do they say, Captain? That humans destroyed an entire civilization because of what happened to your homeworld, that you sacrificed your own ships, your own people for revenge. The silence stretched so long that Lorix thought the humans had terminated the connection. Then a different voice came through, older, authoritative. Not revenge, Captain, justice, and not destruction, but consequence. The human's tone was not neither proud nor ashamed, simply matter of fact. The galaxy has rules now, rules that protect the weak from the strong, rules enforced by those who understand the price of breaking them. The human vessel moved away, continuing its eternal patrol of what had become both graveyard and monument. Throughout the sector, once dominated by the Zytharian Empire, countless species now conducted their affairs under the watchful eyes of human peacekeepers. Some called it occupation, others protection. But none, not even those who whispered resentment behind closed doors, dared to challenge the new order. The lesson of the errands had been learned by all. Humanity would not strike first, but they would always strike last. And as starfaring civilizations went about their business, careful to maintain the peace that humans had enforced through sacrifice and terror, one truth remained unspoken yet universally acknowledged: they had thought humanity wouldn't retaliate. They had been catastrophically wrong.